On Labor Day weekend, in front of exactly 92 people, my father told security to escort me out of his retirement banquet. He didn't wait for them to arrive. He grabbed my arm and dragged me 3 steps back from the head table, like I was a stranger who had wandered into the wrong room. If that opening hit something in you, take a second to like and subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I read every comment, especially the ones that carry a little truth. My name is Lauren Bishop. I'm 29 years old, and that night was the first time my father said, out loud, that I wasn't his real daughter. But what he didn't know, what nobody in that ballroom knew, was that the woman sitting in my seat had been quietly draining his accounts for 11 months. And the proof was sitting inside my husband's briefcase. Before I take you back to how everything started, I need you to answer something for me. If someone erased you from your own family, slowly, piece by piece, would you notice it happening? Or would you only realize when there was nothing left? Because I didn't notice. Not at first. 3 years before that night, my life was simple in a way that only makes sense when you've already lost something. My father, Daniel Bishop, worked 32 years as a logistics supervisor at a distribution center outside Tulsa, Oklahoma. Same shift, 5:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Same routine, same worn leather boots by the door. He wasn't the kind of man who talked about feelings. He showed up. That was his language. Show up early. Work hard. Don't complain. That was how he loved. My mom, Karen Bishop, was a public school librarian. Quiet, steady, patient in a way I didn't understand until I was older. She read everything. She remembered everything. And she noticed everything. When I was 10, she used to sit at the kitchen table grading papers while I did homework. And my dad would come home, drop his keys in the same ceramic bowl, and kiss her on the top of her head, like it was the most natural thing in the world. That kitchen table had 3 chairs. Always 3. No more, no less. That mattered to him. He used to say it like a rule. This house has exactly what it needs. At 13, I learned what it feels like when a house loses something it needs. My mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in early spring. She was gone 18 months later. I was 14. My father didn't cry at the funeral, not in front of me. He shook hands. He nodded. He thanked people for coming. And then he went back to work 2 days later. The kitchen stayed the same. Same table, same chairs, except one was always empty. For 2 years, it was just us. No drama, no new people. Just silence and routine. I thought we were surviving. I didn't realize we were just paused. Then, one night, he told me he met someone. Her name was Evelyn Carter. She worked in financial consulting, which sounded impressive and vague at the same time. She had a daughter named Paige Carter, 1 year younger than me, blonde, confident. The kind of girl who walked into a room like it already belonged to her. Evelyn was polished in a way my mom never tried to be. Perfect nails, perfect smile, perfect timing when she spoke. The first time she came over, she brought a $120 bottle of wine. I knew the price because I Googled it later. That's the kind of detail I remember. She complimented everything. The curtains, the kitchen, the way my dad grilled chicken. She said all the right things. My dad liked that. He married her when I was 16. Small ceremony. Backyard, nothing dramatic. I wore a dark green dress my mom had bought me 2 years earlier. It didn't fit quite right anymore, but I wore it anyway. No one said anything. That was the beginning. Not the explosion, just the beginning. Because nothing broke all at once. It shifted, quietly. The kitchen table was the first thing to go. Evelyn said it looked outdated. My dad agreed. They replaced it with a glass dining set that seated 6. 6. That number stayed in my head longer than it should have. 6 chairs. But only 4 people lived there. Within 4 months, my room was reorganized. Within 6 months, my mom's books disappeared from the living room shelves. Within a year, Paige started calling my dad, Dad, and he didn't correct her. I want you to think about that for a second. At what point does something small stop being small? Is it the first change, or the moment you realize the changes are permanent? Because I kept telling myself it didn't matter. It was just furniture, just space, just words. I left for college at 18, University of Arkansas. Business administration. Scholarship covered tuition, but I worked nights to cover everything else. My dad helped me move in, carried boxes, set up my desk. Same man, same routine. When he left, he hugged me longer than usual. He said, "Call me if you need anything." I believed him. That matters. Because what happened next only works if you believe someone first. For the next 4 years, things felt normal. Not close, but not broken. We talked. Holidays were a little different, but manageable. Evelyn hosted. Paige sat closer to him. I sat across the table, still part of it, just slightly out of frame. I met Ethan Cole when I was 24. He was a compliance analyst, numbers guy, calm, precise, the kind of person who notices details nobody else sees. We got married a year later. Simple courthouse ceremony, 14 people. My dad came. He walked me in. He didn't say much, but when he shook Ethan's hand, he said one thing: "Take care of her." Ethan answered, "I will." That was the last day everything felt honest. 2 months later, the silence started. Calls unanswered, texts ignored. At first, I thought he was busy. Then I thought he was upset. Then I thought I did something wrong. For 2 years, I called him every Sunday. 104 calls. I know the number because Ethan counted them later. Not one answered. Every time I tried to visit, Evelyn met me at the door. Same sentence. "He doesn't want to see you right now." I didn't push past her, and that decision cost me 2 years. Remember that. Because pride sounds a lot like dignity, until you realize it's just fear wearing better clothes. 6 weeks before the retirement banquet, Ethan got a call. Unknown number. A woman named Carol Jenkins. She worked in payroll and benefits at my father's company. She said she needed to discuss something sensitive. Ethan didn't tell me everything, not then. But I noticed something change in him. He started asking questions about dates, about paperwork, about when I last spoke to my dad. Then the invitation came, not from my family, from the company. Retirement celebration for Daniel Bishop. 32 years of service. Saturday, 7 p.m. Black tie optional. I stared at that email for 15 minutes. My name was still in their system. That meant something. Or it meant nothing. Ethan looked at me and said one sentence: "You need to go." I asked him why. He said, "Because some conversations only happen in public." That should have been my warning. I just didn't understand it yet. The night of the event, I wore my mother's navy dress, the one she wore to her last anniversary dinner. It still fit. Barely. We drove 2 hours to the venue. Grand ballroom. Chandeliers. Open bar. Everything polished. Everything staged. I found the seating chart. Head table. Daniel Bishop. Evelyn Bishop. Paige Carter. Executives. My name wasn't there. I should have left. I didn't. Because I needed to hear him say it out loud. What I didn't know was that someone in that room had already rewritten my entire place in his life. And in less than an hour, I was going to find out exactly how far they'd gone. But the first real crack didn't come from my father. It came from a single sentence whispered behind me before the speeches even started. And it changed everything. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. And what that person said to me wasn't meant for me to hear. The whisper came from directly behind my right shoulder. Low enough that it felt like it wasn't meant to travel, but clear enough that it landed exactly where it needed to. "That's not the daughter on the paperwork." I turned. Too fast. The woman standing there looked like she wished she could take the words back the second they left her mouth. Mid-50s, short gray hair, glasses hanging from a thin chain, a leather folder tucked under her arm like it belonged there. She froze when she saw my face. I don't think she expected me to hear it, or recognize it, or understand it, but I did. At least enough to know it wasn't nothing. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "That wasn't—" "What paperwork?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step closer. But something in my tone made her hesitate. The kind of hesitation that tells you you're closer to the truth than you should be. She glanced across the room, toward the head table, toward my father. Then toward Evelyn, then back at me. Her eyes settled on my dress for half a second. The navy fabric, my mother's dress, and something in her expression shifted. Recognition. Not of me, but of something tied to me. "You're Lauren," she said quietly. "Yes." She nodded once. like she'd just confirmed something in her head. "You shouldn't be sitting back here." I almost laughed. I didn't have a seat anywhere else. Before I could respond, Evelyn's voice cut through the room from across the floor. Bright, controlled, performative. "Lauren, I didn't expect you to come." The woman in front of me straightened immediately. Whatever she was about to say, she swallowed it. Professional instinct, or fear, maybe both. Evelyn approached with that same polished smile she'd worn for over a decade. Black dress, gold bracelet, everything intentional. She stopped just close enough to look like she was greeting me, not blocking me. "You found your way in," she said. "The invitation was sent to family." I held her gaze, so I assumed that included me. Her smile tightened for just a fraction of a second. "Barely noticeable, unless you were looking for it." "Of course," she said, "but seating is limited." She gestured behind me. "There's a table near the service entrance." We had to make last-minute adjustments. Adjustments. That word again. Everything with her was an adjustment. A shift. A quiet replacement. Ethan stepped in beside me. "We'll find it," he said calmly. Evelyn's eyes moved to him, took him in, measured him, and dismissed him. "I'm sure you will." Then she leaned in slightly. Her voice dropped just enough to lose the audience effect. "Lauren, let's not make tonight difficult." I didn't answer, because I didn't trust what would come out if I did. She straightened, smile back in place. "Enjoy the evening." And just like that, she moved away, back toward the center. Back to the version of the story she was controlling. I turned back to the woman with the folder. She hadn't moved. "What did you mean?" She hesitated again, longer this time, like she was deciding between two consequences, and neither of them were good. "You should talk to your husband," she said. My chest tightened. "Why?" "Because he already knows more than I'm allowed to say." That landed heavier than anything else so far. I looked at Ethan. He didn't look surprised. He looked ready. "Who is she?" I asked. "Carol Jenkins," he said quietly. "Benefits Administration." Same name from the phone call. Same voice I hadn't heard. The room suddenly felt smaller, like everything had been set up before I even walked in, and I was the last one to understand it. Carol adjusted her grip on the folder. "I shouldn't be involved in this," she said. "Then why are you?" "Because I've been watching something happen for almost a year. And I don't like how it ends." That was the first real crack. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to let light in. She looked at Ethan, not me. Him. "Ask him." Then she stepped away, blending back into the crowd like she'd never been part of the conversation. I turned to Ethan, fully now. No distractions. No Evelyn. No room. Just him. He exhaled slowly, measured, controlled. The way he always does when he's about to say something that can't be taken back. "I know enough to tell you this isn't about the seat, Lauren." "Then what is it about?" He looked toward the head table. "Your dad's retirement accounts." That didn't make sense. "Not yet." "Accounts?" Ethan lowered his voice. "Something's been changed. Paperwork. Beneficiaries." The word hit me harder than it should have, because suddenly, that whisper made sense. "That's not the daughter on the paperwork." My stomach dropped. "Changed to who?" He didn't answer immediately. He watched the room, watched Evelyn, watched Paige, like he was confirming something in real time. Then he said it. "Paige." One word, one clean cut. No hesitation. "That's not possible." It came out faster than I meant it to. Too sharp, too defensive. "It has to be," Ethan said calmly, "because I've seen the documents." Documents. Plural. Not a mistake, not a misunderstanding. Something deliberate. "How long?" I asked. 8 to 11 months. My chest tightened again. Almost a year. This wasn't sudden. This was planned, and I didn't see any of it. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed to be sure." His tone didn't change. Still steady. Still controlled. "If I brought this to you without proof, it would sound like paranoia. And I wasn't going to put you through that." I swallowed. Hard. "Do you have proof now?" He didn't answer with words. He tapped the side of his briefcase. Once. That was enough. For a second, everything around me blurred. The music, the conversations, the clinking glasses, all of it faded behind one realization. Someone had been rewriting my father's life, and I was written out of it. Not emotionally, legally, financially, permanently. "I need to ask you something," Ethan said. I nodded. "When was the last time your dad personally handled any of his own paperwork?" I thought about it. Really thought. Not recently. Evelyn does all that now. He nodded once. Exactly. That wasn't reassurance. That was confirmation. And it scared me more than anything else he'd said. Across the room, my father laughed at something Paige said. His hand rested on hers like it belonged there. Like it had always belonged there. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. Not as a moment, but as a pattern. Something had been built in my place. Slowly. Carefully. Legally. And I hadn't even noticed the foundation being poured. Do you think he knows? I asked. Ethan didn't hesitate this time. No. That answer hit differently because it meant one thing. My father didn't abandon me. He was misled. Which raised a harder question. If he finds out the truth tonight, what will he choose? Me. Or the version of his life he's been living for the last 3 years. Ethan adjusted his cuff. That same small movement I'd seen 100 times before. His tell. We don't have much time, he said. Why? Because once the speeches start, everything becomes public. I looked toward the stage, the microphone, the slideshow screen warming up behind it, then back at him. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't just a reunion. This was a setup, a controlled moment, a place where truth couldn't be ignored. One question sat in my chest, heavier than all the others. And I want you to think about it too. If you had one chance to expose the truth in front of everyone, would you take it? Or would you walk away and protect what little dignity you had left? Because I was about to choose. And either way, there was no going back. And just as I opened my mouth to answer him, the lights dimmed, and Evelyn stepped onto the stage. The lights dimmed at exactly 7:18 p.m., and the room went quiet in less than 3 seconds. Not gradual. Not polite. Immediate. That kind of silence only happens when people are trained to listen. Evelyn stood at the podium with a champagne glass in her left hand and the microphone already adjusted to the perfect height. She didn't fumble. She didn't check notes. She had rehearsed this. Good evening, everyone. Her voice carried clean across the ballroom. Warm. Controlled. Grateful. Tonight, we're here to celebrate a man who has given 32 years of his life to integrity, discipline, and family. Family. She let that word hang just long enough. I felt it. Everyone did. If you're still with me right now, I want you to notice something. Who gets to define family in a room like this? The person who lives it, or the person who controls the story. Because Evelyn wasn't just giving a speech. She was setting a narrative. And every second that passed, she was locking it into place. Behind her, the projector flickered on. A slideshow. Photos filled the screen. My father on warehouse floors. My father shaking hands with executives. My father smiling in ways I hadn't seen in years. Then the personal photos started. Evelyn and my father at a beach resort. Paige and my father at a graduation. Paige and my father at Christmas. Paige and my father at a backyard barbecue. Frame after frame. Moment after moment. One consistent image. Him. And her. Not me. Not once. Not even by accident. Not even in the background. Not even a cropped edge. I stood there, in a room full of people who had known my father for decades. And I watched myself get erased in real time. And here's the thing that hit me the hardest. It wasn't just that I wasn't in the photos. It was that nobody in the room questioned it. Not one person stood up and said, "Wait, doesn't he have another daughter?" Silence can be louder than lies. Remember that. Ethan's hand found mine under the table. Steady. Grounding. But he didn't speak. He was waiting. Timing mattered to him. Evelyn continued. Daniel has always been more than a provider. He's been a guide, a mentor, a father. And I am so proud of the life we've built together. We, she emphasized it, carefully, deliberately. Then she turned slightly toward the head table. And I want to recognize someone very special tonight. My chest tightened. I already knew. His daughter, Paige, who has stood by him, supported him, and shown what real loyalty looks like. There it was. Real loyalty. Paige stood. Perfect posture. Perfect smile. She placed her hand lightly on my father's shoulder, and he leaned into it. Just enough. Enough to make it visible. Enough to make it real. Applause filled the room. Not explosive, but solid, comfortable. Accepted. I didn't clap. I couldn't. because something inside me had gone completely still. Not anger, not yet, something colder. Recognition. This wasn't an accident. This was design. I leaned toward Ethan. This was planned, I said quietly. He nodded once. Every detail, that word settled heavy. Detail. Because that's what I had been missing. While I was calling every Sunday, someone else was building a version of my father's life that didn't include me, and they did it carefully enough that it looked natural. That's the dangerous part, not the lie itself, the consistency of it. Evelyn raised her glass. To Daniel, to legacy, to family. The room echoed her. To family. Glasses lifted, voices blended, and just like that, the version of reality she built was reinforced by 92 people at the same time. That's how narratives win, not by force, by agreement. I want you to think about something. Have you ever been in a room where everyone believes something that isn't true, and you're the only one who knows it? What do you do in that moment? Do you speak, or do you stay quiet and let it pass? Because I was standing right there, and I had both options. Walk out, keep my dignity, or step forward and break everything open. The applause faded. Evelyn smiled, and then she said the one sentence that pushed me over the edge. Let's invite Daniel's daughter up to the table. Singular. Daughter. Paige moved before anyone else could. She sat in the chair to my father's right, the seat closest to him, the seat that used to be mine. And he didn't stop her. He didn't hesitate. He didn't even look around the room. He just accepted it, like it had always been that way. That was the moment. Not when he pushed me later, not when he spoke. This quiet acceptance. That's when something inside me decided. I stood up. Slowly. Not dramatic, not rushed, just deliberate. Ethan didn't stop me. He didn't need to. He already knew. Are you sure? He asked quietly. I looked at the stage, at my father, at the seat, at the life I was being written out of. No, but I'm going anyway. That's the truth nobody talks about. You don't act because you're sure. You act because you can't live with what happens if you don't. I stepped away from the table. 1 step, 2, 3. The carpet softened my footsteps, but it didn't matter. People noticed. They always do. Conversation slowed. Eyes followed. Not all at once, but enough. By the time I reached the center aisle, I could feel it. Attention, curiosity, judgment, all of it. I kept walking. Straight toward the head table. Each step felt heavier than the last. Not physically, emotionally. Like I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. And maybe that's why people don't do it. Because once you step into the truth publicly, you don't get to go back to a quieter version of the lie. I reached the platform. 6 inches off the ground, barely noticeable, until you're stepping onto it. Then it feels like a stage. Paige saw me first. Her smile flickered, just for a second. Then it came back, controlled, practiced. My father turned, looked at me, and for one brief moment, I thought I saw recognition. Something real. Something human. It disappeared, just as quickly, replaced with something harder, more certain. More final. I placed my hand on the back of the empty chair, the one at the end of the table. Dad, I said. My voice didn't shake. I don't know how. We need to talk. Silence. Not polite silence. Not distracted silence. Complete silence. The kind that spreads across a room like a signal. Evelyn leaned toward him, whispered something I couldn't hear, but I saw the effect. His shoulders stiffened, his jaw tightened, and whatever that moment of recognition was, it was gone. He stood up, slow, controlled. He looked down at me, and I realized something I wasn't ready to admit. He didn't look confused. He didn't look conflicted. He looked certain. Like he had already made a decision about me a long time ago, and I was just now catching up to it. Lauren, he said. His voice was calm, too calm. You shouldn't be here. That sentence didn't hurt the way I expected it to, because part of me already knew it was coming. I didn't move. I drove 2 hours to be here. That doesn't change anything. The room stayed silent, watching, waiting. This is a private event, he continued. You need to leave. Private. That word again. Controlled, contained, managed. I tightened my grip on the chair. I am your daughter. There it was. Simple, clear. unavoidable. And for a second, just 1 second, I thought maybe that would be enough. It wasn't. He stepped closer, put both hands on my shoulders. Firm, not gentle, not violent, just decisive. That seat is for my real daughter. The words landed clean, sharp, final. No hesitation. No doubt, real daughter. Paige didn't move. She didn't look away. She just sat there, waiting. And then he pushed me. Not hard enough to make a scene, just enough. Enough to send me back off the platform. Enough to make it clear. Enough to let everyone see it. My heel caught the edge. I lost balance. And I hit the floor. Hardwood. Cold. Unforgiving. The sound of fabric tearing was louder than it should have been. My mother's dress split along the seam, right at the hem. For a second, I didn't move. I just stared up at him, at the man who taught me what stability meant. At the man who used to say, everything holds something else up. And I realized something. He wasn't holding me up anymore. He had already let me fall. Around the room, nobody spoke. Nobody moved. 92 people. And not one of them stepped in. That's how this works. Not with a crowd against you. With a crowd that chooses not to act. Paige slid into the chair, calm, composed, like she'd been waiting for it. It's okay, she said softly. She can't cause problems anymore. My father nodded, and that was it. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't just emotional. This wasn't just family drama. This was something deeper. Something structured. Something built over time. And I was already removed from it. I pushed myself up slowly, my hands steady, my breathing controlled. I could have walked out right then. And for a split second, I almost did. One step. That's all it would have taken. One step toward the exit. And it would all be over. But then I heard a chair move. Not mine. Ethan's. And when I turned, he was already standing, adjusting his cuffs. That small movement again. The one that meant everything was about to change. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't the end of the night. This was the beginning of something they weren't ready for. And Ethan was about to speak. Ethan didn't rush. That was the first thing I noticed. Not anger. Not panic. Control. He buttoned his jacket with one smooth motion and stepped away from the table like he had all the time in the world. The room felt it. That shift. People who had already decided this was over suddenly weren't so sure anymore. If you've ever seen someone walk into a situation knowing they have the truth on their side, you know exactly what that looks like. Quiet confidence. No wasted movement. No raised voice. Just inevitability. He crossed the room. Every step measured. Every eye followed. And for the first time that night, the attention wasn't on me. It was on him. Evelyn noticed first. Of course she did. Her entire instinct was built around control. And right now, something was slipping. Marcus. No, that's what it felt like. The same kind of energy. But this was Ethan. And he was about to dismantle everything she built. Lauren, Evelyn said sharply, forcing her smile back into place. I think it's best if you both leave now. Ethan didn't look at her, not even a glance. He walked straight to me, extended his hand, and helped me up from the floor. His grip was steady, warm, grounding. He glanced down at the torn hem of my dress. His jaw tightened for just a second. Then it was gone, replaced with that same calm. He turned toward my father, Mr. Bishop. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. It always does when the room is already listening. My father's expression hardened. I told you to take her and leave. Ethan nodded slightly. I heard you. He paused, then added, quietly, but before we go, I'd like to ask you something. Evelyn stepped forward immediately. No. Absolutely not. Her tone shifted, less polished, more urgent. This is not the time for questions. Ethan finally looked at her, just for a second, and that was all it took, because something in his expression told her this wasn't a conversation she could control. Actually, he said calmly, this is exactly the time. The room went still again. Different this time. Not shock, anticipation. Mr. Bishop, Ethan continued, when was the last time you personally reviewed your financial accounts? My father blinked. What? Simple question. When was the last time you checked your own paperwork? Confusion flickered across his face, then irritation. I don't see what that has to do with anything. Ethan didn't move. Everything. Evelyn stepped in closer to my father. Daniel, don't engage with this. He's trying to confuse you. Her hand rested on his arm. Tight. Possessive. Like she needed to anchor him before something shifted. But because that one question had done something important. It introduced doubt. And doubt is the beginning of everything falling apart. Ethan reached down and picked up his briefcase. Slowly. Deliberately. He opened it. The click sounded louder than it should have. Inside was a thick folder. Not one document. Not two. A stack. Organized. Labeled. Prepared. I felt my heart start to pound. Not fear. Recognition. He pulled out the folder and placed it on the table in front of my father. Not forcefully. Not dramatically. Carefully. Like evidence. Mr. Bishop, he said, I'm a compliance analyst. My job is to identify irregularities in financial records. Evelyn's voice cut in. Irregularities? She laughed. Too quickly. Too sharp. Are you seriously trying to turn this into some kind of audit? Ethan ignored her again. For the past 2 weeks, I've been reviewing documents related to your retirement accounts. My father's expression shifted. Slightly. You've been doing what? Ethan met his eyes, verifying something that didn't look right. Evelyn stepped forward again. Enough. This is ridiculous. She turned to the room. Everyone, I'm so sorry about this. Clearly, emotions are running high. Ethan didn't raise his voice, but he cut through hers, clean. 8 months ago, a change was submitted to your retirement account. Silence. Total. Absolute. My father's attention snapped back to him. What change? Ethan opened the folder, pulled out 2 documents, placed them side by side. The contrast was immediate. Different paper. Different formatting. Different dates. The original beneficiary designation, Ethan said, names Lauren Bishop at 50%. My breath caught. And the remaining 50% assigned to your spouse at the time of filing. My father stared at the paper. His name. His signature. Familiar. Real. Then Ethan tapped the second document. This one, submitted 11 months ago, names Paige Carter as sole beneficiary. 100%. The words hung in the air, heavy, unavoidable. That's not possible, my father said. His voice wasn't angry anymore. It was uncertain. I never signed that. Ethan didn't hesitate. I know. That's the problem. Evelyn's composure cracked. Just slightly. These are fake. She stepped forward. He fabricated these. You can't just bring papers and… Mr. Bishop, Ethan said calmly. Look at the signature. My father picked up the second document. His hands didn't shake. Not yet. He stared at it. Longer this time. His eyes moved slowly across the lines, then stopped. At the bottom, the signature. He frowned. Something wasn't right. This isn't mine. There it was. First crack. Clear. Undeniable. I don't sign like this. He pointed. The D. It's wrong. I loop the D. This is straight. I've never written it like that. Ethan nodded once. Exactly. Evelyn's voice sharpened. You're mistaken. Stress does that. Memory. My memory is fine. My father cut her off. Not loud, but final. And that shift, that was new. For the first time that night, he wasn't following her lead. He was questioning it. And once that starts, it doesn't stop easily. Paige stood abruptly. This is insane. Her voice trembled. He's lying. Dad, you know he's lying. My father didn't look at her. He kept staring at the paper, like if he looked long enough, it might change. It didn't. Ethan reached back into the folder. There's more. Evelyn stepped forward. No, we are not doing this here. Her voice was louder now, sharp, breaking. But the room had already shifted. People weren't looking at her anymore. They were looking at the table, at the documents, at my father. Ethan placed another sheet down. Phone records, printed, detailed. Mr. Bishop, he said, you were told Lauren stopped calling you. My father didn't respond, but I saw it. That flicker, that recognition of something familiar. These records show 104 calls over the last 2 years. Every Sunday, consistent. Documented. The room reacted. Not loudly, but noticeably. A shift, a murmur, a ripple. My father picked up the pages. His eyes moved down the list. Date after date. Time after time. Call after call. No. His voice was quieter now, barely above a whisper. I never saw these. Ethan's tone softened. Check your phone. Right now. Settings. Blocked contacts. The room held its breath. My father reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, his movements slower now. More deliberate, like he already knew. He navigated through the screen. Awkward, unfamiliar. Then he stopped. One number. Blocked. My number. He stared at it too long. Then slowly, he lifted his head and looked at Evelyn. You blocked her. Not a question. A statement. Her silence lasted 1 second too long. And in that 1 second, everything changed. Because now, it wasn't just doubt. It was proof. And for the first time that night, my father looked at me like he didn't recognize the story he had been living. But here's the part nobody tells you. Truth doesn't fix everything instantly. Sometimes it makes things worse first. Because now he had to face something harder than anger. He had to face that he had been wrong. And not just wrong, manipulated. And the person standing next to him was the one who did it. Evelyn straightened. And when she spoke again, the mask was gone. Fine. Her voice was cold now, sharp. Yes, I blocked her. A ripple moved through the room, but she didn't stop. Because she couldn't. Not anymore. She was toxic, Daniel. She was trying to turn you against us. Against us. There it was again. That word. Us. She stepped closer. Everything I did was to protect this family. My father's expression changed. Not anger. Not confusion. Something deeper. Something breaking. She's my daughter. His voice cracked, just slightly. And that sound, that small fracture, echoed louder than anything else that night. Evelyn didn't back down. She pushed forward. Because that's what people do when they're cornered. They don't retreat. They escalate. And what she said next was the first time the truth slipped out completely. And once it did, there was no pulling it back. Evelyn didn't pause. That was the mistake. People think the breaking point is when someone gets caught. It's not. It's when they keep talking after they should have stopped. Fine, she said again, louder this time. Yes, I blocked her calls. The room reacted. Not loudly, but visibly. Shoulders shifted, eyes narrowed. People leaned forward just a little more. Because now, it wasn't speculation. It was admission. But Evelyn didn't see the shift. Or maybe she did. And thought she could still control it. She stepped closer to my father, close enough to touch, close enough to reclaim position. Lauren was a problem, Daniel. Her tone sharpened. Every time she called, you got distracted. You started asking questions. You started doubting decisions we had already made. We. That word again. My father didn't respond. He just looked at her. And for the first time in years, he wasn't agreeing. He was listening. Really listening. And that difference, that's where things fall apart. She kept going. I was protecting you. From what? His voice was low, controlled. But there was something underneath it now. Something unstable. From her. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She was trying to pull you backward. Back into the past. Back into a version of your life that doesn't exist anymore. The past. She meant my mother. She meant me. She meant everything that came before her. My father's jaw tightened. That's my daughter you're talking about. And there it was. First line drawn. Not strong. Not complete, but visible. Evelyn felt it. You're not thinking clearly, she said quickly. This is exactly what she does. She shows up, creates drama, and suddenly everything we built. That phrase hit me differently now, because suddenly it sounded less like a marriage and more like a project, a structure. Something constructed, deliberately. My father stepped back, not far, just enough to break contact. A small movement, but in a room like that, it meant everything. What else? He said it quietly, but it landed heavier than anything else so far. Evelyn blinked. What? What else did you change? Silence. Short, tight, dangerous. Because now the question wasn't coming from Ethan. It was coming from him, and that changes everything. Evelyn recovered quickly. Nothing. Her voice was firm again, confident. The documents are fake. This is a setup. They plan this. She pointed at me, at Ethan. They came here to humiliate you. That was her play. Redirect. Blame. Shift the narrative. And for a second, it almost worked. Because doubt is fragile. And when people feel exposed, they look for something easier to believe. But Ethan didn't move, didn't react, didn't argue. He just reached into the folder again and pulled out something else. This time, it wasn't a form. It was a timeline, printed, detailed. Dates, transactions, account changes. Mr. Bishop, he said calmly, over the past 11 months, there have been multiple attempts to modify your financial structure. My father looked at him. Not defensive anymore, focused. What kind of attempts? Ethan placed the paper down. Beneficiary changes, access permissions, authorization updates, each one tied to the same email address. He tapped the page. This one. Evelyn's voice cut in again. Stop. But it wasn't controlled anymore. It was sharp, fractured. That's private information. Ethan didn't look at her. It's his information, and he deserves to see it. The room leaned in again, because now this wasn't just family conflict. This was something else, something closer to fraud. My father picked up the page. His eyes moved across it slowly, processing, comparing, trying to understand something that didn't match what he thought was true. He paused. These were submitted from home? Ethan nodded. Yes. IP address matches your residence. That landed hard. Because now it wasn't abstract. It wasn't distant. It was inside his house, inside his life, inside his trust. My father looked up. At Evelyn, you did this from my house? Her silence answered before she did. I was managing things, she said. Her tone dropped. Less defensive now, more justified. You were overwhelmed. You didn't want to deal with paperwork. I stepped in. That phrase again. Like everything she did was helpful, necessary, normal. You forged my signature. His voice didn't rise, but it changed. Flat, heavy, unmovable. I adjusted things, she said quickly. Adjusted. Another word, carefully chosen, to sound smaller than what it was. My father stared at her, longer this time, and I could see it happening. That shift, that realization, the one that doesn't come all at once, but builds, piece by piece, until it's unavoidable. Why Paige? The question came out slow, measured, but it cut deeper than anything else. Because now, it wasn't about the act. It was about the reason. Evelyn hesitated, and that hesitation, that was new. Because for the first time, she didn't have a clean answer. Paige stepped forward. Mom? But Evelyn raised her hand, stopping her. No. She looked back at my father because she knew this was the moment. And whatever she said next would define everything. Because lies only work when they stay controlled. And she had just lost control. Paige needed security, she said. There it was. Simple. Direct. Final. My father didn't react immediately. Security? He repeated it. Yes. Her voice steadied. Stronger now. More certain. Her business failed. She's in debt. She needed a future. I made sure she had one. The room shifted again. This time, heavier. Because now, the motive was clear. Not confusion. Not mistake. Intention. You used my retirement for that? His voice dropped lower, almost a whisper, but sharper than before. I redirected it, she said, for our family. Our family. That word again. But now, it sounded hollow, because everyone in the room could see what it really meant. Not family. Control. My father shook his head slowly, like he was trying to clear something that wouldn't go away. You erased my daughter. The words came out quiet, but they hit harder than anything else that night. You blocked her calls. You removed her from my accounts. You replaced her. Each sentence landed heavier than the last. And for the first time, Evelyn didn't interrupt, didn't redirect, didn't perform, because there was nothing left to control. She stood there, exposed, cornered. And still, she tried one more time. I did what I had to do. Her voice dropped. Less polished, more raw. You would have given everything away. To who? He asked. To Lauren. She said it like it was obvious, like it was a problem, like it needed to be fixed. The room reacted again, not loudly, but enough. Because now everyone understood. This wasn't about protection. This was about replacement. And that changes how people see you instantly. My father didn't speak for a few seconds. He just stood there, looking at her, and I could see it. That final piece, the one that clicks into place, the one that makes everything make sense and break at the same time. Then he said something I didn't expect. Something quiet, something tired, something real. I trusted you. Not dramatic, not loud, just true. And somehow, that was worse than anything else he could have said, because trust isn't loud when it breaks. It just disappears. Evelyn opened her mouth, maybe to explain, maybe to defend, maybe to try one last time, but nothing came out. Because there was nothing left to say that would fix it. Around us, the room had changed. People weren't watching a scene anymore. They were witnessing something unravel, something real, something irreversible. And right in the center of it, my father stood between two versions of his life, the one he had been living and the one he had lost. And he was finally starting to see the difference. But here's the part nobody prepares you for. Even when the truth is clear, the damage is already done. And what he did next wasn't about choosing sides. It was about facing something much harder, himself. My father didn't speak for 12 seconds. I counted them. Because silence like that has weight. Not empty, not awkward, heavy. The kind that forces everyone in the room to sit inside it, whether they want to or not. He wasn't looking at Evelyn anymore. He wasn't looking at Paige. He wasn't even looking at me. He was staring at the table, at the documents, at the life he thought he understood, laid out in front of him in black and white. If you've ever had a moment where everything you believed suddenly doesn't line up, you know that feeling. Not anger, not yet disorientation. Like the ground didn't move, but somehow you did. I want to ask you something. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you never thought to check what they were doing behind your back? Because that's where he was standing right now, and there's no clean way out of that. He picked up his phone again. Not rushed, not dramatic, slow, deliberate. He opened the blocked list. Still one number. Mine. He stared at it like it was something foreign, something he didn't recognize. Then he scrolled, checked messages. Notifications, call history, nothing. No missed calls, no texts. Because he never saw them. They were filtered out before they ever reached him. That realization, that specific realization, is where the real damage hits. Because it means something very simple. You didn't just ignore someone, you were prevented from seeing them. And that takes the blame and moves it somewhere else. But not all the way. Never all the way. 147 calls. No, that was another story. Here, it was 104, but the number didn't matter. The consistency did. Every Sunday, same time, same effort, and he never knew. His hand tightened around the phone, slightly. Not shaking, but not steady anymore either. You told me she stopped trying. His voice was low, directed at Evelyn. Not loud enough for the room, but everyone heard it anyway. Because when truth starts to come out, people listen harder. Evelyn crossed her arms, defensive now. Closed. I told you what I saw. No. He shook his head. Small movement. Controlled. You told me what you wanted me to believe. That distinction landed hard because now he wasn't confused anymore. He was starting to understand. And once that starts, you can't undo it. Paige stepped forward. Dad, not now. He didn't raise his voice, but she stopped immediately because this version of him, she didn't know how to handle. The room shifted again. Subtle, but clear. People were no longer watching a conflict. They were watching a correction. And corrections aren't always loud. Sometimes they're quiet, precise, unavoidable. He looked back at the documents, at the forged signature, at the timeline, at the email address tied to his own house. Then slowly, he sat down. That movement mattered more than anything else so far. Because sitting down meant one thing. He wasn't walking away from this. He was staying in it, facing it, processing it. And that's harder than leaving. Ethan didn't speak, didn't push, didn't explain further. He let the silence do the work. That's what professionals do when they know the evidence is enough. They don't oversell. They don't argue. They wait. And that wait is where the truth settles. My father ran a hand over his face. Slow, tired. Like something inside him had just aged 5 years in 5 minutes. How much? The question came out quieter than anything else he'd said. Ethan answered immediately. Combined retirement and pension value, approximately $380,000. The number landed hard, because numbers don't argue. They don't soften. They don't explain. They just exist. My father nodded once. Slow. Processing. And if this had gone through, Ethan didn't hesitate. It would have transferred entirely to Paige upon activation of retirement. My father let out a breath. Not sharp, not loud, just empty. 32 years. He said it like he was reminding himself. 32 years. Every missed holiday, every overtime shift, every decision he made thinking he was building something stable, something secure, something real. And it almost disappeared. Quietly, legally, completely. I watched him. Really watched him. And for the first time in 3 years, I saw the man I remembered. Not the version Evelyn built. Not the version that ignored me. The real one. The one who noticed details. The one who didn't tolerate mistakes. The one who understood structure. Because this was a structural failure, and he knew it. Then he asked the question that mattered more than all the others. Why didn't I notice? That wasn't directed at anyone. Not me. Not Ethan. Not Evelyn. It was directed at himself. And that's where it gets dangerous. Because once someone starts questioning their own judgment, everything else follows. Evelyn stepped forward again. Careful now. Measured. Daniel, you trusted me. She softened her tone. Tried to rebuild control. I handled things for you. That's what a partner does. He didn't look at her. Not this time. A partner doesn't forge signatures. Flat. Final. And just like that, her position shifted. Not wife. Not partner. Something else. Something closer to liability. Paige moved again, more hesitant now. Dad, I didn't know about the signature. Her voice cracked slightly. Just enough. That might have worked earlier. Not now. My father finally looked at her, and this time, it wasn't the same look he had before. Before, there was warmth, connection. Now, there was distance. You knew she was blocked. He said it quietly. Paige didn't answer immediately, and that silence, that was the answer. Because truth doesn't always come from what people say. It comes from what they don't. I need you to think about something. When someone stays quiet while something wrong is happening, are they innocent? Or are they part of it? Paige swallowed. I didn't want to make things worse. That sentence, that exact sentence, is what people say when they chose comfort over truth. My father nodded slowly. Not agreement. Recognition. You let it happen. 3 words. No anger. No volume. Just accuracy. And somehow, that hit harder than everything else. Paige stepped back. Just 1 step. But it was enough. Because now, she wasn't standing beside him anymore. She was separate. And separation, that's where consequences start. The room had gone completely still again. But this silence was different, heavier, more final, because everyone understood now. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional, planned, sustained, and exposed. My father leaned back in his chair, slow, controlled. But his eyes kept moving. Between the documents. Between Evelyn, between Paige, and finally, they landed on me and held longer than before. Not 1 second, not 2, long enough to matter. And in that look, I saw something I hadn't seen in 3 years. Not certainty, not distance, something else. Doubt, regret, recognition, and maybe something closer to truth. But here's the part nobody prepares you for. Even when someone sees the truth, they don't always know what to do with it, because accepting it means accepting what they've done. And that's harder than being lied to. He opened his mouth, like he was about to say something important, something that could change everything. And then a voice from across the room interrupted, firm, clear, unavoidable. Mr. Bishop, we need to address this formally. Every head turned. Because the person who spoke wasn't family. And what she was about to say was going to take this out of the room and into something much bigger. The voice came from the back of the room, clear, professional, unafraid. Mr. Bishop, we need to address this formally. Every head turned at the same time, because tone matters. And that tone didn't belong to family. It belonged to someone who deals in consequences. Carol Jenkins stepped forward. Same gray hair, same folder. But now, she wasn't blending into the background. She was stepping into it. If you've ever watched someone who doesn't care about social tension, only facts, walk into a situation, you know what happens next. The room adjusts, not out of respect, out of awareness. Evelyn reacted immediately. Carol, this is not your place. Sharp, defensive, too fast. That told me everything. Carol didn't stop walking. Actually, it is. Her voice stayed level. I handle benefits administration for this company. When there's evidence of unauthorized changes to an employee's retirement accounts, that becomes a company matter. Company matter. That phrase shifted the entire room. Because now, this wasn't just family. This was legal. My father looked up at her. Carol. His voice sounded different, less certain, more grounded, like he was reaching for something stable. Carol stopped at the table, opened her folder. Inside were documents, more than Ethan's. Organized, tabbed, prepared. I flagged this 2 months ago, she said. 2 months. That number hit me. This had been unfolding longer than I knew. The signature discrepancy didn't match our internal records. The submission method was irregular. And the email used was not linked to your verified company account. She placed a document in front of him. Printout. Submission log. Time, date, IP, address, everything. My father leaned forward. Reading. Processing. You flagged it, and no one told me? Her eyes softened slightly. I was instructed to verify before escalating. That's when I reached out to your son-in-law. Ethan gave a small nod. That was it. No credit, no explanation. Just acknowledgement. Evelyn stepped forward again. No. This is completely inappropriate. Her voice was louder now, tight, fractured. You had no right to involve him. Carol didn't look at her. I had every obligation to protect an employee's assets. Obligation. That word carries weight because it doesn't ask permission. It acts. The room shifted again, this time more visibly. People were no longer watching quietly. They were choosing sides, not loudly, but internally. And you could feel it, that subtle change, from curiosity to judgment. My father's hand rested on the table, near the documents, near the phone, near everything he thought he understood. He didn't look at Evelyn, not once. He stayed focused on the information in front of him. That told me everything. Because attention is a choice, and he had just chosen where to put his. Carol continued, There's more. Evelyn let out a sharp breath. Of course there is. Sarcasm. Deflection. But it didn't land anymore, because she had already lost control of the narrative. Carol flipped another page. 2 years ago, there was an attempt to add Paige Carter as a beneficiary on your company life insurance policy. 2 years. My chest tightened. This didn't start 8 months ago. It didn't start 11 months ago. It started earlier, much earlier. I rejected it, Carol said, because she does not qualify as a legal dependent. The room reacted, this time louder. Not voices, but movement, shifts, exchanges of looks. Because now, this wasn't one action. This was a pattern, and patterns are harder to defend. My father leaned back slowly. 2 years. He repeated it. Quiet, controlled, but heavy. You've been doing this for 2 years? He didn't look at Evelyn. Still, not once. That mattered. Because when someone stops looking at you, it means something inside them has already stepped away. Evelyn crossed her arms tighter. I was planning. Planning. Another word. Carefully chosen. But it didn't work anymore. Because everyone in the room understood what it really meant. You were positioning assets. My father said it like a statement, not a question. Evelyn didn't answer, because she didn't have a version of that word that sounded better. Paige stepped in again. Mom, just stop. Her voice was lower now, shaken. This isn't helping. Evelyn turned on her. Sharp. Immediate. Don't you start. That shift, that loss of control, everyone saw it. Because when someone turns on their own ally, the structure collapses faster. Carol closed her folder slightly. There's one more issue, she said, and this one is critical. The room stilled again. Because the word critical does something. It signals escalation. It tells people this isn't over. My father looked up. What is it? Carol met his eyes. The submission email, used to file the beneficiary change, is registered under a personal account linked to Evelyn's maiden name. Silence. Not just quiet. Stillness, complete. Because that detail, that one detail, connected everything. No more ambiguity. No more interpretation. Direct link. Direct action. Direct responsibility. My father didn't move. Not immediately. He just sat there, looking at the document, looking at the email address, reading it, rereading it. Like maybe it would change. It didn't. He finally lifted his head, and this time, he looked at Evelyn, really looked at her, not through her, not around her, at her. And what was in his expression wasn't anger. Not yet. It was something worse. Clarity. Did you think I wouldn't find out? His voice was quiet, but it carried. Because truth doesn't need volume. Evelyn opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, searching for something. Anything that would work, but there was nothing left because all the pieces were already on the table and everyone could see them. I want to ask you something. When someone finally sees the truth after being lied to for years, what do you think hurts more? The lie itself or the realization that you believed it? Because that's where my father was sitting right now, between those two things. And there's no easy way through that. He stood up slowly, not abrupt. Not aggressive, controlled, but different, because now he wasn't reacting. He was deciding. And that's the shift everything builds toward. Evelyn took a step toward him. Daniel, stop. One word, flat, final. And she stopped. Immediately, because that tone, she recognized. That was the version of him she couldn't manage. The version that didn't need her. The version that saw clearly. The version that made decisions without her. The room held its breath again. But this time, it wasn't waiting for drama. It was waiting for direction. Because once someone reaches that point, something changes. Not loudly, not visibly, but permanently. My father looked at the table one last time. At the documents. At the phone. At the evidence. Then he turned and started walking. Not toward Evelyn. Not toward Paige. Toward me. Slow, deliberate, like every step mattered. And suddenly, everything in the room shifted again. Because now, this wasn't about exposure. This was about what came after. And what he was about to say wasn't just going to change the night. It was going to decide what was left of us. My father stopped exactly 2 steps in front of me, close enough that I could see the lines around his eyes more clearly than I had in years. Close enough that I could hear his breathing. Not steady, not controlled, real. For a second, neither of us spoke, and that silence felt heavier than everything that came before it. Because this wasn't about evidence anymore. This wasn't about Evelyn. This wasn't about Paige. This was about us. If you've ever stood face to face with someone who hurt you, and you know they finally understand what they did, you know how complicated that moment is. Because part of you wants to hear the apology, and another part of you doesn't trust it yet. Lauren. He said my name like it hadn't been spoken in years. Not casually, not automatically, carefully, like it mattered. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I just waited. Because this time, he needed to do the work, not me. He glanced down at my dress, the torn hem, the navy fabric, my mother's dress that used to be your mom's. Yes, my voice was steady. I wore it for you. That landed harder than anything else because it connected everything he had just realized to something he couldn't ignore. The past, the truth, what he lost, what he allowed to be erased. His jaw tightened. I pushed you. He said it quietly, not for the room, for himself, for me. Yes, no denial, no softening. Just truth. And that's where something shifted. Because accountability doesn't start with excuses. It starts with acknowledgement. I pushed you in front of everyone. Yes, another confirmation. No emotion added. No comfort given. He nodded slowly, like each word was something he had to accept fully before moving forward. I don't know how to fix this. There it was. Not, I'm sorry. Not yet. Something more honest, more raw. Because sometimes people don't know how to apologize, but they know something is broken. And that's where it starts. You don't fix it right now. I said it calmly, controlled. You start by understanding it. He looked at me, really looked. Not through a version of me, not through Evelyn's words, at me. And in that look, I saw something that had been missing for a long time. Recognition. You called me every week. It wasn't a question. No. Every Sunday, 104 times. The number mattered now because it made it real, consistent, intentional. He closed his eyes briefly, just a second. But it was enough, because when people close their eyes like that, they're not tired, they're overwhelmed. I thought you stopped caring. His voice dropped, lower. I thought you moved on. I let that sit, because correcting him wasn't enough. He needed to feel it. You didn't think that on your own. That landed because it forced him to connect the dots, to see the influence, to see the manipulation, without me spelling it out. He nodded. Slow. Yeah, one word, but it carried more weight than anything else, because it meant he understood. At least part of it. I should have come sooner. That surprised me. I looked at him. Really looked this time. Because that wasn't about Evelyn. That was about me. I should have come to the house. I should have asked questions. I should have checked. He exhaled. Instead, I just accepted it. Accepted. That word hit differently. Because that's how most damage happens. Not through action. Through acceptance. Silence. Avoidance. Letting something continue because it's easier than confronting it. I could have pushed past her. I said it quietly. Twice. He looked at me. Why didn't you? That question, it mattered. Because it wasn't blame. It was curiosity. Real curiosity. And that meant he was trying to understand. Not defend. I held his gaze. Because I didn't want to beg. That truth sat between us. Clean. Sharp. Honest. He nodded again. Slow. Like he understood that too. Yeah. Pride. He said it without judgment, not accusation. Recognition. I didn't correct him because it wasn't wrong, but it wasn't the whole truth either. It wasn't just pride. It was self-respect. It was fear. It was pain. But I didn't explain that. Not yet, because this moment wasn't about explaining everything. It was about seeing if he could meet me where I was. Around us, the room had shifted again. Conversations were low. People were watching, but more quietly now. Less like spectators, more like witnesses, because this wasn't a scene anymore. This was something real, something private, happening in public. My father looked back toward the table, at the documents, at Evelyn, at everything that had just been exposed. Then back at me. I believed her. He said it plainly. No excuse, no justification, just truth. And that mattered more than any apology he could have given. Because you can't rebuild anything until the truth is clear. I know. I said it just as simply. And that surprised him. I could see it. Because he expected anger. He expected blame. He expected something louder. But sometimes, the quiet response is the one that hits hardest. Because it shows you're not reacting. You're deciding. And I was. I was deciding what this moment meant. Not just for him. For me. I want you to think about something. When someone finally sees the truth after hurting you, do you give them a chance to fix it? Or do you walk away while you still have control? Because both are valid. And neither is easy. My father took a small step closer, not enough to touch me. Just enough to close the distance slightly. I'm sorry. There it was. Simple, clear, unpolished, not perfect, but real. I held his gaze longer than before. And I meant what I said next. I accept your apology. He nodded. Relief flickered across his face, just for a second. Then I added, but that doesn't fix everything. The relief disappeared, replaced with understanding. Because this wasn't a reset. This was a beginning. We're not okay, I continued. Not yet, but this is where it starts. He nodded again. Slower this time. More grounded. Okay, one word, but it carried something new. Willingness. And that's what matters. Not perfection. Not immediate forgiveness. Willingness. Behind him, I could feel Evelyn watching. Not speaking. Not moving. But present. Because even when someone loses control, They don't disappear immediately. They wait. They look for openings. They look for ways back in. And something told me she wasn't done yet. My father turned slightly, looked back at the room, at the table, at everything that had been exposed. Then he said something that shifted everything again. "We're not finished here." His voice was louder now, clear, directed, not at me, at the situation, at the room, at the truth. And that's when I realized something. This wasn't just about repairing what was broken between us. He was about to deal with what caused it, fully, publicly. And once that started, there would be no quiet ending, no controlled resolution, no way to contain it, because the truth had already come out. And now it was going to be dealt with in front of everyone. But what none of us expected was that Evelyn still had one last move left. And this time, it wasn't going to be subtle. Evelyn didn't step forward right away. That was the first thing that felt wrong. For the past 20 minutes, every time control slipped, she moved, spoke, redirected. But now she stayed still, watching, calculating, and that silence, that was new. If you've ever dealt with someone who manipulates quietly, you know the most dangerous moment isn't when they're loud. It's when they pause, because that means they're choosing their next move carefully. My father turned back toward the head table, toward the documents, toward everything that had been exposed. "We're going to finish this." His voice carried, clear, not emotional, not reactive, decisive. That tone. That was the man I grew up with. The one who didn't leave things unresolved. The one who didn't ignore structural problems. The one who fixed them. Evelyn finally moved. Slow, controlled, like nothing had happened. Like she still had a place in this. "Daniel," she said softly, "this doesn't need to be done here." There it was. Containment. Her last strategy. Take it out of the room. Reduce the audience. Regain control. My father didn't look at her. "Yes, it does." Flat. Final. And just like that, her leverage shrank again. Because public truth is harder to reshape. She adjusted her posture, straightened her shoulders, rebuilt the composure. "If you want to talk, we can do it privately. We've always handled things privately." That word again. Privately. But now it sounded different. Not respectful. Not protective. Strategic. Because private means unobserved, unverified, unchallenged. My father shook his head slightly. "No, not this. Not anymore." The room leaned in again, because now this wasn't exposure. This was resolution. And people wanted to see how it ended. Evelyn exhaled slowly, then changed tactics. "Fine." Her voice dropped. Less polished, more personal. "If we're doing this here, then let's be honest." Honest. That word almost made me laugh. Because honesty doesn't usually show up this late. She turned to the room, to the audience, and for a moment, she found her footing again. "You're all seeing one side of this." Her tone shifted, measured, careful, like she was rebuilding a case. "Lauren left this family." That landed, not as strong as before, but still enough to create doubt. She chose college out of state. She chose her career. She chose to build a life somewhere else. Each sentence constructed. Each one technically true, but incomplete. And that's how manipulation works. Not through lies, through selective truth. She stopped, let it settle, then delivered the next line. "She wasn't here." That one hit differently, because absence is easy to weaponize. Even when there's a reason, even when it's not abandonment. The room shifted slightly, not as much as before, but enough. Because people understand absence. They relate to it. And Evelyn knew that. My father didn't react immediately. He just listened. Which told me something important. He wasn't rejecting her outright. He was evaluating. And that was dangerous. Because if she regained even a small amount of control, this could shift again. Evelyn took a step closer. "Daniel, you needed stability." Her voice softened. Lower. More intimate. "I gave you that." "You needed support." "I gave you that." "You needed someone who was present." "I gave you that." Present. There it was again. That contrast. Me. Absent. Her. Present. Simple. Effective. Dangerous. Because it reframed everything. Not as manipulation, as replacement. And for a second, I saw it. that flicker in my father's expression. Not agreement, but hesitation. And that was enough, because hesitation is where doubt grows. I stepped forward, not fast, not aggressive, just enough. You blocked me, I said it calmly. No emotion added, just fact. The room stilled again, because simple truth cuts through narrative. Evelyn turned toward me. Sharp, immediate. You stopped trying. No. I held her gaze. You made sure he never saw me try. That landed. Clean. Unavoidable. Ethan stepped beside me, silent, but present. Support doesn't always speak. Sometimes it just stands. Evelyn's eyes moved between us, calculating again, adjusting. Then she shifted one more time to something deeper, something more dangerous. Paige was here. She said it quietly, softer, more emotional. She needed a father. That line, that one line, hit the room differently. Because now it wasn't about money. It wasn't about paperwork. It was about emotion, loss, need. And those things, people understand them. They sympathize with them. Paige stepped forward slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. I just wanted a dad. And there it was, the strongest card left. Not logic, not justification. Emotion. Vulnerability. The room shifted again, more noticeably this time. Because people respond to that. They always do. I felt it, that pull, that moment where the story almost changes direction again. Because now, it wasn't just about what was done. It was about why. And that complicates everything. I looked at Paige, really looked. And for the first time that night, I didn't just see the girl who took my place. I saw someone who had been missing something too. And that made it harder, not easier. Harder. Because now, the situation wasn't clean. It wasn't just right and wrong. It was layered, complicated, real. But then I asked the question that cut through all of it. And I want you to think about this too, because it matters. Wanting something, does it justify how you get it? I held her gaze. You knew I was calling. Her silence lasted 3 seconds. 4. That was enough. Because truth lives in silence, longer than it does in words. I didn't want to. She stopped, didn't finish, didn't need to. Because we already knew. You let it happen. I said it quietly. Not harsh, not loud, just clear. She nodded, barely, but she did, and that was it. That was the moment. Because now, the emotional defense collapsed. Not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly, like something deflating. My father watched all of it. Every word, every pause, every shift. And I could see it again. That clarity, returning, stronger this time. More stable, because now he wasn't just seeing the facts. He was seeing the full picture. Evelyn, Paige, me, everything, and how it all fit together. He stepped forward, not toward me, not toward Paige, toward the center, toward the room, toward the truth. And when he spoke, his voice didn't shake, didn't rise, didn't break. It settled into something solid, something final. This isn't about who was here. He said it slowly. This is about what was done. That line cut through everything. Because it removed emotion from justification. It brought everything back to action, to accountability. Evelyn opened her mouth again. But he raised his hand, and she stopped. Immediately, that told me everything. Because control had shifted completely. For the first time that night, she wasn't leading anything. He looked at her, direct, unfiltered. You forged documents. You blocked my daughter. You changed my accounts. Each sentence precise, measured, unarguable. Then he added one more. And you expected me to thank you for it. Silence. Total. Because that line, there's no response to that. None that works. Evelyn didn't speak, couldn't. Paige didn't move, didn't try. The room didn't shift, didn't murmur. Everything just held. Because everyone knew this was it. This was the point where everything settled into place. And there was no going back. But what none of us expected was what my father did next. Because instead of raising his voice, instead of exploding, he made a decision. And that decision was far more devastating than anything he could have said. My father didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam his hand on the table. He didn't look at anyone for approval. At 7:46 p.m., in a room full of 92 people, he picked up his phone, dialed a number, and put it on speaker. If you've ever seen someone choose action over emotion, you know how quiet that moment feels. No buildup, no warning, just a decision. The call rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, Daniel, a male voice answered. It was Mark Ellison, Senior HR Director. Everyone in that room knew him. We're still at the banquet, Mark, my father said. I need you to come into the ballroom. Now. A pause. Is everything all right? No. Another pause. I'll be right there. The line went dead. The room shifted again. Not curiosity. Not gossip. Tension. Because now, this wasn't just internal. It was official. Evelyn stepped forward quickly. Daniel, what are you doing? Her voice was controlled again, but tighter, more urgent. He didn't look at her. Finishing it. 2 words. Flat. Final. That was worse than anger. Because anger reacts. This acted. She tried again. We don't need HR involved in this. This is a private matter. Number. He cut her off. And that tone told everyone something had changed permanently. You made it a company matter when you forged company documents. That landed like a verdict. No argument. No space to twist it. Evelyn's composure slipped again, just slightly. You don't know what you're doing. My father turned to her slowly, and this time, there was no hesitation. I know exactly what I'm doing. That was the moment she lost him completely. Not emotionally, structurally. The connection she built over years collapsed in one sentence. Paige stood frozen beside the table, not speaking, not moving. Because now, there was nothing left to say that could fix it. Carol remained where she was, calm. Prepared, like she had expected this exact outcome. Ethan stood beside me, silent, watching. He didn't need to do anything else. His work was already done. I want you to think about something. When someone finally chooses truth over comfort, what do you think it costs them? Because this wasn't just about exposing Evelyn. This was about my father admitting he had been wrong. Publicly, completely. And that's not easy for anyone, especially not someone who built his life on being right. The ballroom doors opened. Mark Ellison stepped in, mid-50s, suit slightly loosened, expression already alert. He took one look at the room and knew that something serious had happened. Daniel, he said, walking forward. What's going on? My father didn't waste time. There's been a fraudulent modification to my retirement accounts. The word fraudulent hit differently because now it wasn't implied. It was stated clearly, formally. Mark's expression changed immediately. He moved closer to the table. What kind of modification? Ethan stepped forward slightly, controlled. Professional. Beneficiary reassignment with a forged signature. We have documentation. He slid the folder toward Mark. No drama, just evidence. Mark opened it. Started reading. His posture shifted, straighter, more focused, because this was now his responsibility. Evelyn stepped in again. This is being blown out of proportion. Her voice was sharper now, less polished. These documents are not verified. They will be. Mark didn't look up. His tone was firm, neutral, professional, but final. And just like that, her influence over the situation dropped to 0 because she couldn't control him. Not with emotion, not with narrative, not with anything. Mark flipped through the pages, stopped, looked at the signature, then at my father. Did you sign this? No. One word, clear, no hesitation. Mark nodded once, then looked at Carol. Carol? She stepped forward, already prepared. Submission logs confirm irregular email source. Signature mismatch flagged 2 months ago. IP address traces to employee residence. Mark processed it quickly, efficient, structured. Then he looked at Evelyn. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside for a moment. That was it. No accusation. No escalation. Just process. And process is what turns truth into consequence. Evelyn didn't move. I'm his wife. Her voice sharpened. I have every right. Not in this matter, Mark cut in, still calm. Still controlled, but unmistakably firm. This involves company assets and potential fraud. That word again. Fraud, it echoed, because now it wasn't just implied wrongdoing. It was categorized, defined, serious. The room shifted again, more noticeably, because everyone understood what that meant. Legal. Investigation. Real consequences. Evelyn looked at my father. One last attempt. Daniel. He didn't respond, didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her. And that silence, that was the final break. Because when someone stops responding, they've already decided. She stepped back. Not willingly. Not gracefully, but she stepped back. And in that movement, everything she built lost its position. Paige followed her instinctively. One step behind, not speaking, not defending, just retreating. My father stayed where he was, at the table, with the documents, with the truth. Mark closed the folder. I'm going to initiate a formal review first thing Monday. His tone was steady. Until then, all account activity will be frozen. He looked at my father. No changes, no withdrawals, no transfers. Understood? My father nodded. Yes. Mark turned slightly. We'll also need to involve legal if this is confirmed. If. That word mattered. Because process requires confirmation. But everyone in that room already knew. Then Mark looked at Evelyn again. Ma'am, I strongly advise you not to access or modify any related accounts. She didn't answer because she couldn't, because there was nothing left to control. Mark stepped back. Professional, efficient, contained. I'll follow up with you directly, Daniel. Then he turned and walked out. And just like that, it was official. Not a family argument. Not a misunderstanding. An investigation. The room exhaled. Slow. Collective. Because tension like that doesn't disappear instantly. It releases. Gradually. My father stood there for a moment, looking at the table, at the empty space where everything had just changed. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled out a chair, not the one Paige had been sitting in, the one next to it, and he looked at me. That seat was always yours. He said it quietly, not for the room. For me, I stepped forward, slow, measured, and sat down. Not because everything was fixed, not because everything was forgiven, because something had started. And that mattered. Around us, people began to move again. Conversations returned, quiet, cautious, different, because the room wasn't the same anymore. And neither were we. But here's the thing. Even when truth wins in public, the real consequences don't happen there. They happen after, in private, in silence. In the days that follow, and what Evelyn did next, after the room emptied, was something none of us saw coming. Because losing control doesn't always make someone stop. Sometimes it makes them desperate. At 10:12 p.m., after the last guest shook hands and left, the ballroom doors closed, and the silence that followed felt nothing like the silence before. This one was private. No audience, no applause, no performance left to maintain, just consequences. If you've ever seen what happens when someone loses control completely, you know this part isn't loud at first. It's quiet, tight, unpredictable. The staff cleared glasses in the background. Chairs scraped softly against the floor. The chandeliers still glowed, but the room felt dimmer somehow, like something had been drained out of it. My father stood near the head table, one hand resting on the back of the chair I had just taken. Not sitting, not moving much. Just there, processing. Ethan stepped closer to me. You okay? I nodded. I wasn't fine, but I was steady. And right then, steady mattered more. Carol approached us again. Measured steps. Same folder. Same calm presence. Mr. Bishop, she said, I'll send a formal summary tonight so legal can review it first thing Monday. My father nodded. Thank you. He paused. Then added, you didn't have to step in like that. Carol met his eyes. Yes, I did. Same answer as before. No hesitation. Because some people don't need recognition. They just do what's right. She turned slightly toward me. Lauren, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I held her gaze. I'm glad I found out. And I meant that. Because truth, late, is still better than truth, never. She gave a small nod, then stepped away. Quiet. efficient, done. That's how people like her move. They don't stay for aftermath. They handle facts and leave emotions to everyone else. The room thinned out. Staff moved faster now, clearing tables, resetting the space, like none of this had happened. Like the room could just return to normal. It can't. Not really. Ethan squeezed my hand once. I'm going to bring the car around. I nodded. Take your time. He understood what that meant. This wasn't something I could rush through. He walked toward the exit, leaving me alone with my father. For the first time in 3 years, truly alone. No Evelyn. No Paige. No buffer. Just us. And everything that sat between us. My father finally sat down, across from me. Same table. Different reality. He picked up the documents again, looked at them. Not reading this time. Just looking. Like they represented something bigger than paper. They did. They represented what he missed, what he allowed, what he lost. I should have seen it. He said it quietly, not looking up. I didn't respond right away, because this wasn't about correcting him or comforting him. It was about letting him sit in it. You ever realize something too late and wish you could rewind it just 5 minutes? I met his eyes. Every day. That answer surprised him, because he expected distance, not understanding. He nodded slowly. Yeah. He leaned back slightly, hands folded together. I thought I was building something stable. He said it like he was explaining it to himself, like everything was under control, like I had things handled. You built something, I said calmly. It just got taken over. That distinction mattered, because it separated his effort from what was done to it. He looked at me, and I saw it again. That shift, that rebuilding, small, slow, but real. I let someone else manage things I should have been paying attention to. Yes, I didn't soften it, didn't adjust it, because truth doesn't need comfort. He nodded again, accepting it, fully this time. Then he asked something I didn't expect. Are you angry at me? That question, that one, wasn't about facts. It was about us. And I took a second before answering, because the truth mattered more than speed. Yes, I said it simply. He nodded, like he expected it, like he deserved it. But I'm not just angry, I added. He looked at me. What else? I held his gaze. I'm disappointed. That one hit harder. I saw it. Not physically, but internally. Because anger is loud. It passes. Disappointment stays. It lingers. It reshapes how you see someone. He looked down again, and this time, he didn't try to respond immediately, because there wasn't a quick answer for that. I don't expect you to fix this quickly, I continued. Or perfectly. He nodded slowly. Good. Because I can't. Honest. Direct. Real. That's where we were now. Not repaired. Not broken. Beyond repair. Somewhere in between. And that's harder. Because it requires effort. Time. Consistency. Things you can't fake. He leaned forward slightly. What do you need from me? That question, that mattered. Because it shifted the focus from his guilt to my boundary. I thought about it. Carefully. Because what I said next would define everything moving forward. I need you to be consistent. I said it clearly. Not emotional. Not reactive. Consistent. He nodded. Okay. Answer your phone. Yes. Don't let anyone filter your decisions again. Yes. And I paused, because this one mattered most. Don't choose what's easier over what's true. That landed deep, because that's what caused everything. Not just Evelyn. His choices, his avoidance, his acceptance. He nodded again. Slower. More deliberate. I can do that. I held his gaze. We'll see. Not harsh. Not dismissive. Just honest. Because trust doesn't rebuild on promises. It rebuilds on proof. And proof takes time. We sat there for a few minutes, not talking, not avoiding, just existing in the same space. And somehow that felt like progress. Eventually, he stood, walked toward the head table, picked up something, then came back. He placed it in front of me. A photo. Old. Worn. Edges slightly bent. It was me. 5 years old. Sitting on his shoulders at a construction site. Hard hat too big. Smile too wide. He looked at it. Then, at me, I kept this, he said quietly, even when everything else changed. That mattered. More than anything else he could have shown me, because it meant one thing. I wasn't completely erased. Not really. Just buried. And now, brought back up. Ethan's car pulled up outside. I could see the headlights through the glass doors. I stood up. So did he. We faced each other again. Same distance as before. But it felt different now. Less like strangers. More like something unfinished. I'll call you tomorrow, he said. I nodded. I'll answer. And that was the beginning. Not dramatic, not perfect, but real. I turned toward the exit, walked through the doors, didn't look back. Because some moments don't need to be repeated. They just need to be understood. I got into the car, closed the door, and for the first time that night, I exhaled fully. Ethan glanced at me. You okay? I looked out the window, at the building, at the night, at everything that had just changed. Yeah, I said quietly. I think I am. But here's the truth nobody tells you. The confrontation. That's the easy part. What comes after? That's where things are actually decided. And what happened over the next few weeks proved something I wasn't sure of yet. Whether this was really the beginning of something better or just the end of something that couldn't be saved. Because karma doesn't always show up immediately. But when it does, it's never subtle. 3 weeks after that night, at exactly 8:03 a.m. on a Tuesday, my father called me before I even had time to start my first meeting. He didn't text first. He didn't hesitate. He called. And that mattered more than anything he could have said. If this story has stayed with you, take a second to like and subscribe. And tell me one thing in the comments. What's one boundary you wish you had set sooner? Because this chapter, this part, is where boundaries actually get built. Not in anger. Not in confrontation. In consistency. I answered on the second ring. Hey. My voice was steady. Simple. No weight added. Morning, he said. No pause. No awkward silence. Just normal. And that's how I knew something had changed. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But enough. We talked for 6 minutes. Nothing heavy. Weather. Work. A bridge project I was reviewing in Kansas. He asked questions, listened to the answers, didn't rush, didn't drift. At minute 6, he said something small. I'll call you Sunday. That landed because Sunday used to mean something else. 104 calls, unanswered. Now, it meant something new. I'll pick up. I said it just as simply, and that was it. No apology, no revisiting. Just a new pattern starting. That's how repair actually works. Not through one big moment, through repeated small ones. By the second week, he had gone to HR in person, sat down with Mark, signed formal statements. When every document, every account, every detail, nothing was left to assumption anymore. The investigation confirmed it. Forgery, unauthorized access, intentional modification, all tied back to Evelyn. Clean, documented. Unarguable. Legal followed quickly. Not loud, not dramatic. Structured. Precise, because that's how real consequences happen. Quietly, but permanently. Evelyn moved out 2 days after the banquet. Not gradually. Not negotiated. Gone. Closet emptied. Drawers cleared. No note. No explanation. Just absence, which felt fitting, because that's how she removed me. Quietly. Without confrontation. Paige left with her. No argument, no scene, just followed. And I didn't stop her. Because some people have to live through the consequences of what they allowed. 2 weeks later, I got an email from Paige. Subject line, I should have said something. 2 sentences. I knew she was blocking you. I just didn't want to lose him. I read it twice, then closed it. I didn't reply. Not out of anger. Out of clarity, because understanding someone's reason doesn't erase what they did. And I wasn't ready to pretend it did. My father started going through the house. Not cleaning. Restoring. That's the only word that fits. The glass dining table was gone. Sold. Replaced. The oak table came back. Scratches. Still there. Edges worn. But solid. He refinished it himself. Sanded it down. Resealed it. Not perfect, but real. He put it back in the center of the kitchen. 3 chairs, at first. Then, a 4th. That detail mattered, Because it wasn't about replacing what was lost. It was about rebuilding something different, something honest. The first time I went back there was 26 days after the banquet. I didn't rush it, didn't force it. I waited until I could walk in, without feeling like I was stepping into something I didn't belong to. Ethan stayed in the car. Take your time. He said it the same way he always does. No pressure, no timeline. I walked up to the door. Same house, same steps, different feeling. I opened it. Didn't knock. Because I didn't need permission anymore. The smell was different, subtle, but noticeable. No candles, no artificial layers, just clean air. My father was in the kitchen, standing by the table. He didn't look surprised, like he had been expecting me. Or maybe just hoping. You're here. He said it simply. Yeah. I stepped in, set my keys down, looked around. My mom's photo was back, on the wall, not hidden, not moved, where it used to be. That hit me harder than I expected. He followed my gaze. It should have never been taken down. No, it shouldn't have. No anger, no blame, just agreement. We sat at the table, across from each other. Same positions, different reality. He poured coffee, 2 mugs, no ceremony, no performance, just routine. We talked. Not everything, not all at once, just enough. He told me he switched back to his old watch, a $40 Timex he bought years ago. Said it felt more honest. I didn't question it, because I understood what he meant. Some things matter more because of what they represent, not what they cost. Halfway through the conversation, he said something that stayed with me. I don't want to lose you again. That sentence, that one, carried everything. Fear. Regret. Awareness. I held his gaze. Then don't, I said it calmly. No emotion added. Because the answer wasn't complicated. It was just difficult. We didn't hug. Not then. Not that day. And that was okay. Because this wasn't about rushing into comfort. It was about building something that wouldn't break the same way again. Over the next month, things stayed consistent. Calls, texts, visits. No missed Sundays, no filtered messages, no silence. And that consistency, that's what started to matter. Not words, not promises, pattern. That's what rebuilds trust. Evelyn filed for divorce. 4 months later, it was finalized. Because the financial manipulation was documented, she received nothing from his retirement accounts. 0. Everything restored. Exactly as it should have been. Paige didn't reach out again. And I didn't reach out to her. Not because I hate her. I don't. But because not every relationship needs to be repaired. Some just need to end. And that's a boundary too. Carol retired that same quarter. She sent my father one last email about account security. He printed it, put it in a folder, labeled it, kept it. That's who he is. Or maybe that's who he's becoming again. Ethan stayed exactly the same. Steady. Quiet. The kind of person who doesn't need credit to make a difference. He didn't save me. He gave me truth. And sometimes that's more important. I didn't get a perfect ending. I didn't get everything back. What I got was something real. A father who answers his phone. A table with 4 chairs. A house that feels like it remembers itself. And a boundary I didn't have before. Here's what I learned. And I want you to really think about this. Forgiveness isn't about pretending it didn't happen. It's about deciding what you carry forward and what you leave behind. I didn't forget what happened on that floor. The push, the words, the silence of 92 people. That doesn't disappear. But it doesn't control everything anymore either. My name is Lauren Bishop. I'm 29 years old, and I build systems for a living. Processes, structures, things that are supposed to hold under pressure. But the strongest thing I've ever built was a boundary. If you're still here, I want to ask you one thing. If someone who hurt you came back and truly changed, would you let them in again? Or would you protect the version of yourself that learned to live without them? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story stayed with you, there's another one waiting. Because sometimes the hardest stories to tell are the ones that matter the most.